Why should you read One Piece? Where do I even start? Maybe you just keep stumbling across this anime and finally have given in to finding out what all the hype or annoyance, whatever you think it is all about. Well, let me tell you, with only a few years left to go in the series and the beginning of the final saga, now is the perfect time to come aboard the Straw Hat ship and sail to the One Piece along with the rest of the fandom. Or maybe you might already be a full-on believer and know just how absolutely earth-shatteringly brilliant this piece of fiction is, and you just can't help but want everyone you know to experience it too. Like for me, it's my mate that you might know, Datus, who asked me for a video on why he should start One Piece.
Actually, I have read the beginning of One Piece, but the problem is I'm a manga collector and I have box sets 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And I stopped right after box set 1, which is basically the end of the crocodile arc, okay? The problem is I moved to a different country, a different continent, and now I don't have box sets 2, 3, and 4 to pick from. And I usually like to read it physically. I don't want to read it online because it's just a long series. I don't want to like go online on the internet and just scroll. I read my manga on the toilet, okay, every time I poop, okay. My favorite pastime was picking up a volume of One Piece, going to my toilet, reading 1 to 2 chapters, and then getting hyped, basically. I do love One Piece. I do want to continue. I think I'm just gonna wait until like Connor finishes his One Piece because he has the physical editions at his house. I'm just gonna wait till he finishes it and then I'm gonna borrow it. Or if I go on vacation back in my hometown, I don't know, maybe I can marathon, but I probably won't. Anyways, I do want to continue reading One Piece.
Well, here is the super short, really not long at all answer. Chapter 1, a brief history of One Piece. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to convince someone to take the plunge and start reading the series, but it can be quite of a hard sell. Watching a 26 episode series can be enough of a commitment by itself, but asking someone to read or watch 1,000 chapters / episodes, it can seem downright daunting for very obvious reasons. Not to mention that maybe some people are turned off by the cartoonish looking art style, thinking it's not as serious or cool as some of their other favorite series. Well, I'm here to change your mind about that. Thanks to a, let's say questionable 4Kids dub and a few other factors, One Piece has had a hard time growing its fan base in the West compared to series like Dragon Ball or Naruto. But let's look at the facts. This is the most successful manga of all time and one of the most successful pieces of literature ever. One Piece has outsold every other comic series but Superman. That means that its sales numbers have beaten out both Spider-Man and Batman, whose publication history predate One Piece by many decades. And the estimated sales for the series place Eiichiro Oda, its author, within the top 10 best-selling authors of all time. He's just passed Dr. Seuss, and soon One Piece will even outsell Harry Potter. Simply put, One Piece, with a serialization spanning 25 years, is a worldwide sales juggernaut. Why? Well, because it's just that good. Before we get started though, you might want to know some of the basics. So what is One Piece about? One Piece takes place 20 years after the execution of the notorious king of the pirates, Gold Roger. On the executioner's stand, Roger announced to the world that he left his treasure, the One Piece, hidden somewhere out in the world's most dangerous sea, the Grand Line, a terrifying strip of ocean that spans once around the globe. The announcement of this great treasure led to a great age of piracy, which brings us to our protagonist, Monkey D. Luffy, a rambunctious young pirate who has rubber powers thanks to eating a devil fruit, a magical type of fruit that bestows special abilities to someone who eats them, but at the same time also renders them unable to swim, a pretty big drawback in a story that takes place on the high seas. And so throughout Luffy's adventure, he gathers together a crew of equally unique characters to fight side by side as he takes on rival pirates and the world government in an attempt to fight the world's greatest treasure. Overall, there are really 4 great qualities that make One Piece stand out among its peers: the world building, the plot, the characters, and the tone. Aren't there any more qualities than these that make One Piece fantastic? Of course there are, but we don't want to get get into any dangerous spoiler territory in this video and dampen your experience of the series. So without further ado, let's get into chapter 2, the world of One Piece. If you ask the average fan what their favorite thing about One Piece is, a lot of them will say it's outstanding world building. If all you've ever seen is promotional images, it probably seems like One Piece is just a nice little story where our crew sails around the world getting into hijinks. What I definitely wasn't ready for when I started the series was a complex web of political intrigue that easily stands on the level of a series like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. So if you really enjoy fleshed out fantasy worlds, you will definitely fall in love with the world of One Piece. This world is filled with pirates searching for the ultimate treasure, the One Piece, but along the way our crew visits a lot of islands, each with its own unique government, culture, creatures, etc. And so one island may be filled with prehistoric dinosaurs and battling giants, whereas the next one is an expansive desert kingdom. One island may be based on feudal Japan, and another one might be a dream-fueled Candyland straight out of a Disney movie. And the wildest thing about all of this is that all these diverse places somehow form a cohesive whole. We don't simply stop off somewhere and then sail away into the horizon, never to think about these past islands ever again. Instead, they all interact seamlessly with one another and the history of the world. Each kingdom or island the Straw Hats visit are connected politically through the world government, a shadowy organization that claims to uphold the peace and defend the people from the evil pirates, but in reality causes just as much or arguably even more suffering as the pirates do. The world of One Piece is composed of many different factions that move independently from our main characters. And while the protagonist, Straw Hat Luffy, certainly makes his mark on the world, he's just one small fish in a very big pond of characters. While the story sagas are shaped by the Straw Hats' actions, the world is always moving and shifting behind the scenes as well. Between each major story arc, Eiichiro Oda shows us what the major players of the world are up to elsewhere. In no other series will you see a fan base get so ecstatic about something as seemingly simple as a newspaper. But when Big News Morgans drops the latest issue, you better believe we're about to get some mind-blowing updates about what's going on with our favorite characters. Simply put, this world doesn't seem just like a game board for places to move on around on. It feels like a real, living, breathing place, and we care deeply about its many inhabitants. Oda has filled each and every of these islands with so much care and consideration that we're really on the edge of our seats while we wait to see how the complex political dynamics play out in the end. And that is all thanks to chapter 3, the characters. And so of course we have to talk about the stars of the show, the incredible web of characters, and wow, does One Piece have some fantastic ones. I mean, with over 1,000 characters in the series, there's a little something for everyone here really. But central to One Piece is of course the Straw Hat crew. Our main character, Monkey D. Luffy, is unlike any other shonen protagonist. Just on the surface level, he seems to share some essential traits with other shonen heroes. He's got the brains, or lack thereof, of Goku, and a lofty goal like Naruto, but no one has the conviction that Luffy does really. And while he really wouldn't do too well on his standardized tests, he has an intuitive, emotional intelligence that allows him to make friends everywhere he goes. More than his rubber body, his true power is the way that he relates to others and fights for those that he cares about. Most of the time he's carefree, silly even, but when it's time to get serious, he'll send a chill down your spine and you'll be cheering for him when he gives villains what they deserve, which usually is a really big punch. The rest of the crew is also fantastic. The absolute badass swordsman Zoro, the greedy navigator Nami, the cowardly sniper Usopp, the Souei chef Sanji, the cotton candy loving reindeer Dr. Chopper, and a singing skeleton named Brook, as well as some others that I won't spoil for now because their joining can come as a bit of a surprise, I guess. Every one of these characters not only has spectacular feats, but they have dreams and convictions that match their captain's dream to become the pirate king. And while they're fun and even silly on the surface, they all have depth. As we learn about the tragedies they suffered in their childhood that made them who they are today, we fall in love with this cast of characters. Also, you will definitely 100% cry when you get to some of their backstory, so just be ready for that. Now, of course, our main crew are only the beginning. The Straw Hats also encounter many others on their travels, and some standouts are the amazing villains. The Marines are tasked by the world government to hunt down the law-breaking pirates, which means that our main cast constantly are on the run from fearsome members like Captain Smoker or Admiral Akainu. However, there are also, of course, opposing pirates, such as the 7 Warlords of the Sea, which includes fierce and intimidating characters like the criminal mastermind Crocodile, or the greatest swordsman in the world, Dracule Mihawk. When we're introduced to these characters, they appear as insurmountable obstacles. Some of them are literally impossible to even touch. And so, of course, it makes it all the more satisfying when Luffy and his crew use their resolve and their skills to overcome these villains and save the innocent people on the islands they encounter. And speaking of those innocent people, the Straw Hats have their fair share of allies on the seas of the Grand Line too. Some are royalty who rule the various islands they visit and liberate, such as Nefertari Vivi, the Princess of Alabasta, but some are even fellow pirates, like the fan favorite Trafalgar Law. And then, of course, there are the legends who either in the past or present have shaped the One Piece world itself. People like Gold Roger, the pirate who on the execution stand started the Great Age of Piracy by telling people across the world to go and search for his treasure, the One Piece. Throughout the adventure of One Piece, you'll meet a fascinating cast of people, and if it sounds like a lot, well, no worries there. Oda takes his time in each location and with each character to let us get to know each of them as people and to fully develop them throughout the story. It's one of the many reasons that One Piece's length actually works in its favor. It's all killer, no filler. Which brings me to chapter 4, the plot. The plot of One Piece is another fantastic reason that you should read this series. The amazing thing about One Piece isn't that it has over 1,000 chapters. It's that it has 1,000 chapters and it's still going strong. The arcs being published right now are some of the best One Piece have to offer. And there's one simple reason for this. The mangaka Eiichiro Oda planned his story from the very beginning. I know that this seems trivial, but you'd be amazed at how many authors don't actually know how their story will end when they begin publication. They just kind of start from a premise and make it up as they go along. 25 years ago, Luffy set out to find the ultimate treasure, the One Piece. He's still searching for that treasure, and many are skeptical that whatever it will be in the end will be disappointing, like the treasure will be the friends you made along the way. However, Oda-sensei has already gone on record saying that the treasure is something physical, or at least part of it. He has had the final panel and the overall story of the series planned for decades. And while he does insert fun details and ideas along the way to expand on the world that he's created, the broad strokes of the story are already well thought out. I mean, it would have been one thing to have a great idea for a pirate adventure and just letting Luffy start his journey without having the end in mind, but eventually he probably would have run out of ideas. But ever since the beginning, Oda has been constructing a story with one singular goal, which honestly makes it such an impressive series, not just among manga, but among literature in general. One way that you can see this is with Eiichiro Oda's masterful hints and foreshadowing. Characters will be mentioned in the early beginnings of the story only to show up and play a very important role hundreds of chapters later at points. And that really just goes to show the thorough planning that went into creating this masterfully structured story. Not to take digs too hard at other series, but many of them seem to be developed based on a central interesting premise, but eventually really start falling apart the longer they get because the storytellers didn't begin with the ending in mind. Let's just call it the J.J. Abrams effect. Let's just leave the world of anime for a second and think about how TV shows like Lost or the much maligned Star Wars sequel trilogy begin by Abrams setting up so many mysteries so fans get sucked in by all the intrigue. The problem is that Abrams has not figured out what the solution to the mystery really is and seemingly also doesn't care. power, leading to his properties having terribly disappointing endings. Many anime series seem to suffer from the exact same problem. For instance, in Bleach, a series that I really hold dear, the Soul Society was a fantastic early arc. However, it does seem like Tite Kubo, the author, wasn't sure what should happen afterwards. So they just rinsed and repeated with a new kidnapped ally to rescue and a new assortment of powerful baddies to fight. Dragon Ball Z kind of does the same thing as well. And who of course can't forget the ending of Naruto when we found out that, big spoiler warning by the way, skip ahead if you don't want to hear this, it was aliens all along. Like granted, One Piece also has some moon and space stuff going on, but that's always been well established for hundreds of chapters instead of suddenly pulling it out of nowhere at the very last minute. Most anime also deal with a problem I call power creep, the problem of running into an impossibly strong villain, having the heroes develop a new power-up to defeat them, and then rinsing and repeating over and over until the powers are just so absurd and don't fit into the established scope of the narrative anymore. And while One Piece does have cool powers and power-ups, it avoids the problem of power creep that we see in so many other series. In an early scene, we're for example introduced to one of the literally strongest characters in the entire series, Dracul Mihawk, the greatest swordsman in the world, one of the 7 warlords of the sea I mentioned earlier. In that encounter, Luffy's crewmate Zoro, whose goal is to become the world's greatest swordsman himself, faces off against him. Zoro, who we've seen effortlessly take out opponents left and right before this moment, is absolutely annihilated by Mihawk. And so, thanks to this scene and some others like it, we early on get to see the power ceiling of the world. And that way, future power-ups don't just seem like massive ass pulls out of nowhere, and instead they seem in line with the properties of the world as we've known it right from the start. The consistency of One Piece is just outstanding. Even the quote-unquote bad arcs, or at least the least favorite ones among the fandoms, often surpass the qualities of many other normal stories. Are there occasionally flaws or inconsistencies? Sure. Eiichiro Oda is surprisingly still human after all. But the positives of these series, especially given its massive length, outshine the negatives by far. And this is really mainly thanks to Chapter 5, the overall tone. Another reason to watch One Piece is its tone. And this encapsulates a lot of things, as you might guess. When Matt Owens, a producer of the upcoming Netflix live-action One Piece series, was talking about adapting the series, he said One Piece does 3 things. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry, and it makes you say, holy shit. First and foremost, something that really makes One Piece stand out among its peers is its sense of humor. Sure, other shonen often have gags and bits of humor sprinkled in as well, but One Piece really has laughter baked into its core. I mean, just look at some of the character designs, but just the characters in itself and the jokes in this series are just hilarious. And the scenarios that they get themselves into can be just as funny. Luffy having rubber powers is essentially just a stretchy cartoon man. Sometimes to fight, he blows himself up into a massive balloon. Once, when fighting a character with food-based powers, he valiantly ate his way to victory with the ferocious appetite that only a shonen protagonist could have. Some people do criticize One Piece for its occasional wacky and goofy art style, which is fair, it's subjective. But the truth is that this is one of its greatest strengths, really. Not just because it's usually very funny, but also because it makes the emotional and very serious moments hit just that much harder, like the contrast between them. You'll just be sitting there, just enjoying your goofy pirate manga when suddenly you're openly sobbing. I don't care if you have a heart of stone. You will cry when you see the suffering that this cute reindeer has endured, for instance. And when you see some of the ridiculous stakes that many of these arcs get to, you will be openly stunned. When an entire country of people and characters you've grown to love are incredibly at stake, and the only possibility of saving them means Luffy defeating a villain who has already utterly defeated him multiple times before that, how can you not be on the edge of your seat? And even if you know deep down that things should probably work out fine because there are still hundreds of chapters to go, it still still won't stop you from jumping out of joy when Luffy finally beats the big baddie. Lots and lots and lots of reasons that you need to check out One Piece. From the world building to the characters to the story, this is a must-read experience of media. Experiencing the story live along with a dedicated fan community isn't something that you want to miss out on. And once you get caught up, you can always come back to this channel here to enjoy some of the theories and character analysis that I've been working on. Or if you don't care about being spoiled and you want to start right now, how about watching the best One Piece theory that you will ever see, I guess.